everyone. I'm Dr. Baria Dardari. I'm a consultant pediatrician with experience and interest in functional medicine and developmental pediatrics. I worked with many families and patients in the past 25 years to treat autism from inside out and treat it as a whole body disorder and focusing on gut health among other points. I'm happy to be here with Mr. John to discuss the gut-brain axis and treatment and approaches for healthy gut-brain axis in neurodivergent patient.
Good morning. I'm John Payne. I'm the CEO of Pure Life Health Sciences Group, but primarily I've been for the last 50 years a researcher in metabolic syndrome diseases. And in the last 11 years, we've been focusing on autism since it was identified by a major university in the United States as being not solely, but primarily a metabolic health issue.
Thank you, John. Should I call you Mr. John or John?
Anything you want. There's no problem.
Right.
I'm easy.
Let's do the on a first name basis. So I have a lot of questions for you. Maybe I'll start with knowing from your global experience, what pattern do you consistently see between gut imbalance and neurodivergence?
Well, the first things that we see in virtually all the children and adults, there's many adults that have autism also, is GI issues, gastrointestinal issues. There will virtually all, the majority of people on the autism spectrum have a disrupted gut. So their microbiome is dysfunctional. Also, we identify a significant portion of them have gut permeability or intestinal permeability issues with like leaky gut. It's also their immune system is not cooperating properly or operating properly. And also there's a noticeable difference in how their neurotransmitters function. One last thing that seems to be prevalent in all of them, it's not all the symptoms, but one thing that seems to be prevalent in all of them is a mitochondrial dysfunction.
So it's kind of like a cascade of factors that basically you think it, like from the gut permeability to the dysbiosis to immune activation and then triggering mitochondrial dysfunction and ultimately the neurological symptoms.
That is correct. The gut-brain axis dictates your health, okay, physically and mentally. What we found also, if I may interject this, that there are two other areas that typically we see is also there's a dysbiosis in the sinuses, and also how the eyes function, how the eyes work, is why some types of light therapy do work on some children. And if you combine the gut with the other two, you tend to have better success.
Excellent. So how would you explain the role of microbial diversity in cognition, attention, mood, in like a simple kind of layperson terms for our parents?
Okay, straightforwardly, our gut is the university for our brain. Okay, it's a constant two-way communication system between there is a constant two-way communications going on between the gut and the brain, and it dictates how we function mentally.
Absolutely, I would like to say like it's our second brain, if not the first, but our second brain, correct?
Yes.
So what biomarkers and clinical signs do you consider most reliable when basically one is assessing the gut-brain dysfunction?
The clearest signs clinically is the combination of gastrointestinal and non-motor neurological symptoms, okay? And then always persistent GI symptoms, whether it's diarrhea or constipation or back and forth between the two. And also the non-motor neurological issue shows up all the time. Mood disturbances such as anxiety and depression, or a mixture of those. Sleep disorders, in the majority of them, they don't sleep at night. Their night goes into the next morning. Also, cognitive decline, especially after the age of 3, kind of like a brain fog. We also, in our data, we show that after the age of 15, we show another cognitive decline after the age of 15. Yeah. And then a loss of smell and taste.
Interesting.
Many of them lose the sense of smell.
I cannot agree more about the sleep part. Many of our patients don't come because of the mainly concerned about the speech delay or the aggression. They just want the child to sleep basically and get their their sleep back and make sure that the child is rested and focused. And so absolutely. So from your practice, have you noticed that there's some subgroup of children or patients that respond better to when we do the gut interventions versus others?
Yes, those with a higher gastrointestinal and extraintestinal symptom severity respond much quicker and stronger. They're really the most likely to benefit from a gut-directed intervention.
And then based on your data, that's why you think some children improve dramatically when the gut issue is addressed, because that was their main, basically, area of disruption or disrupted physiology or neurochemistry and affecting the neurotransmitters and the sleep.
Yes, those who have severe gastrointestinal issues, their bacteria population, the necessary bacteria populations in their gut are not only out of balance, meaning they have fewer than they need, and they have more bad bacteria population than they need, but the ratios between the two are completely out of balance. And when we get somebody who has those type of severe symptoms, once you start addressing those symptoms, and you can't do it just with probiotics, okay, because they also have significant deficiencies in certain vitamins and minerals, et cetera. A good example is folate, okay? And you have to address all of those simultaneously. Autism, we found, is a multi-dimensional disorder. And what we found is it starts in the gut, and the gut controls it seems to be. And if you start healing the gut or addressing the microbiome issue, then it's a cascade effect. If you also hit it from several different angles with the proper vitamins and minerals so that you cure those deficiencies, your results come much stronger and faster.
So all the epigenetic factors affecting, basically.
Correct.
The eventually causing the symptoms or the improvement. What are the myths or misconceptions that you want to clear about the gut-brain axis that parents may have read on ChatGPT or other sources?
Well, the internet is a wonderful thing, but it's also a very misleading thing sometimes, because you get many different answers, only one of which is probably correct. All right? But the one thing I'd like to really clearly state is if your child or family member is on the autism spectrum, okay, there is a disruption in their gut, okay, and it has to be addressed. But you can't just address it by an over-the-counter probiotic, okay? The specific bacteria populations that need to be enhanced are typically not in just your general probiotics. And actually, with some non-targeted probiotics, you can do harm as opposed to benefit with it. Another thing I'd like to address is that understand the importance of gut health, because it does control your health mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it doesn't just stay in the gut. So you address the gut, it just doesn't have to do with things like digestive issues. It impacts your daily life and how you feel, how you act, how you approach things, your emotional approach, your anxiety, your stress. Look, modern science has discovered that you can treat things such as depression, stress, anxiety, schizophrenia by treating the gut. It's not a neurological issue. It's just a neurological symptom. And what we found in our studies, what we found is that that's true with people on the autism spectrum.
And I might add maybe also ADHD patients or, all neurodivergent patients.
Yeah,
Correct?
to be honest, what we found is that if you address the gut properly, and the vitamin and mineral deficiencies that exist along with that, because how your brain functions also affects your gut, because it's a two-way communication system. But we found that if you address the gut, you can also positively contribute to health in things such as Alzheimer's, dementia, all forms of dementia, Parkinson's, and as I said
All
before,
the chronic disease that are, increasing in prevalence and
and metabolic in nature. Yes, correct. Yeah.
So where do you believe the future of the gut health science research is headed for in the next few years?
I personally believe that, let's say, gut health science is the next great frontier, and it will help us solve many of the health issues, one of which is autism, that exists today and are growing exponentially because the quality of our diet worldwide has significantly degraded since World War II.
True.
All right? And as we learn more about not only what causes something, but what to do to address these causes, which, as I said before, emanate primarily from the gut, then we'll see some major leaps in effectively managing and treating many of the health issues. Look, many of the health issues of today are metabolic in nature, because our diets are destroying our metabolic system, and how it functions. The gut-brain axis affect all the metabolic pathways that tell the brain what to do.
The immune pathway, the neurotransmitter pathway,
Correct.
the vagus nerve, and that,
Correct.
just to mention a few.
Well, I'd like to add one thing, just because you touched on it already. If you treat the gut, okay, which means then you're treating the metabolic pathways, and if you also do certain things to help the vagus nerve in that communication pathway or program, you'll see significantly better results also if you'll tone the vagus nerve at the same time, and it's simple to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for all your insight.
Thank you. Dr. Baraya, in your clinical practice, how often do you see gut issues appearing alongside developmental or behavior challenges?
Very often, I would want to say at least 50% of our patients on the spectrum or non-neurotypical kids or kids with sensory issues, ADHD issues, will have gut issues during the diagnosis or as a trigger for the behavior that the parents are bringing the patient to the clinic. Group of patients may even have a higher percentage, but roughly I'll say minimum 50% of these kids will have a gut issue. A lot of the parents would think that this is a just coexistent issue and it's not a cause and effect, but again, majority of these kids, these GI issues and gut issues is a major trigger of the behaviors and the disruption in their daily life, including the sleep, the focus, the mood, etc.
Thank you. When a child presents with both sensory issues and digestive concerns, how do you typically approach the evaluation?
Yeah, thank you for this question, because we are seeing a lot of increase also in sensory integration disorder, and some of these kids might not be on the spectrum or might not have other disorder, but they just have the sensory issues. And very important to review basically the lifestyle, starting with the diet, because usually the diet has a lot to do with their sensory symptoms, and also review the GI symptoms with the parents. Pediatrician, we are usually fascinated with the bowel movement because it tells us a story about the child. And so we start basically with the clinical history, clinical approach, but we have a lot of tests that in our toolbox that really help us dig deeper into the child's gut health. So we have several tests, including urine tests, stool tests, and even DNA stool tests that will help us get to the bottom of how is the child gut health, what is, does he have enough good bacteria or beneficial bacteria, what's the ratio, or if there's any imbalance or dysbiosis, among other markers that we look at. So,
Given the limited diets that many autistic children and people have, because they're very taste, texture sensitive, their nutritional
absolutely.
issues are, how do you
So-
address that?
So most of these kids and families are going into a vicious cycle. The child has a sensory issue. They become more and more selective. That will reflect into on their gut health because they don't have enough prebiotics, probiotics in their diet. Not to mention that sensory issues also, they might have the mouthing behavior where they can introduce bacteria, parasites into their gut. These kids also might have been exposed earlier to antibiotics, and that as part of their past medical history due to gut infection, other infections, or prematurity, and then that add to the factors to affecting their gut health. And then basically the ultimate result is gut dysbiosis, and it's so difficult to address due to the child's selective eating. So definitely we try to basically support the patients and the family through the dietitian support, through the gut health supplements, but the right supplements again, because not, as you mentioned earlier, not every supplement, not every proflora, probiotics is basically right for that patient.
Correct.
I'd like to look at it like when we see a patient with autism or autism spectrum disorder, I would like to look at it as autisms with an S, because not every child is the same. So when the parents come and ask for the neighbor's treatment, basically we make sure to explain that each child is unique and each child treatment should be also individualized.
Are you a believer in attacking or treating autism from several angles simultaneously?
Absolutely, because we don't have time to waste also. So we have the early age of 2 to 5, and like we tell the parents, the early intervention is so crucial in that stage of life, but also intervening from multiple angles to heal the gut, address the inflammation, be it the gut inflammation or neuroinflammation, addressing the immune imbalance, including autoimmunity in some of our subtype patients, addressing the mitochondrial dysfunction, which is now more and more research showing that it's very much related to some subtypes of kids on the ASD spectrum.
Correct.
And also the nutritional deficiencies, or now basically with the increased interest in leucovorin and its use in overcoming the autoimmune antibodies affecting the folate receptor. So yeah, we look at it holistically.
Okay, good. Thank you. What are the most common misconceptions parents have about gut-related symptoms in neurodivergent children, in your opinion?
Again, they look at it as an issue that's the child has, but not necessarily making the connection that these symptoms, these basically the disrupted gut issues is what's affecting the child focus, what's affecting the child sleep, that they need to address it first in order for the child to be able to focus on his early intervention session or to be able to attend basically a nursery or school. So it's important to basically emphasize the cause and effect rather than the association. Yeah.
What we found in our studies and research was that if you can properly address the key gut issues and the nutrient deficiencies, if you can properly address them, you typically see noticeable improvements in sleep-related issues, digestive issues, and calmness, the less aggressive behavior. You typically see that within the first, say, three weeks or so.
Absolutely. I mean, the irritability usually reduces, and especially with the nonverbal kids, because they cannot tell us. Again, the negative behaviors, the aggressive behavior reduces. Another misconception also is that like one treatment fits all. Basically that, okay, I want to address the gut issue. They did some reading about the gut-brain axis, but they just want basically to grab an over-the-counter supplement or just, order a supplement online without basically pre-testing or digging deeper into what the child needs. So that's another misconception that I would like to clarify.
I agree with you. And what I found is that you have to have a broad range, nutrient dense product. You can't just take one supplement like, let's say, vitamin E or vitamin D or whatever. Just take one and use that to treat it. There's a broad range and it has to be addressed at the same time. I agree with you.
Maybe I'll add also a third misconception about the diet. So also, like some patients read about, the basically elimination diet or certain special diet, and also would will try it with the patient, and this might not be the right diet for the patient. So again, any elimination diet or selective diet needs to be done under the guidance of a dietitian or pediatrician, and also be based on clear testing for that patient, like test results.
Okay. After treating gut issues, what kinds of developmental or behavioral improvements do you observe most often?
So as we just discussed, the first one is the mood and the behavior. So the child mood would improve, and that could be a reflection of also the improvement of sleep. We see that sleep and gut issues very much related. The focus improves because the child is calmer, less irritable, less hyperactive. In return, we also see improvement in receptive language, also as a first sign of developmental improvement. Reduce in sensory issues as well, because some of the pain or basically inflammation that was in the gut was triggering those sensory issues, like being for that child. So all the above can improve. Again, it depends on the child and it depends on the underlying problem.
Okay, thank you. How do feeding difficulties and sensory-based eating patterns impact gut long-term health?
All right, so again, we populate our gut with the prebiotics, probiotics that we need when we eat like a diverse diet, color-rich diet, and usually if we have a healthy diet and we're not exposed to antibiotics, then we are able to get it from natural sources. Unfortunately, because our kids are selective to their sensory issues, then they basically have the beige or the white diet where they're not getting any prebiotics, any fiber, they're not getting any probiotics either, and basically that in return can cause the dysbiosis, the imbalance, which also they also might have like a high diet of inflammatory foods such as like gluten, which can cause inflammation, and leaky gut, which in return can even increase further the brain inflammation. So it's just a cascade of event, or like a vicious cycle of one triggering the other.
It's interesting that you say that. In some of our research, we had some patients that would only eat French fries.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all they would eat.
Which is so difficult for parents, and like obviously causes a major nutritional deficiency in these kids, and
And inflammatory response.
inflammatory response as well. Yeah. So
Yeah, thank you. When do you think a pediatrician should refer a child for a gut-focused assessment?
I think each child who's been diagnosed or in the process of being diagnosed as a neurodivergent child, like be it suspicion to be on the spectrum or neurodevelopmental delays or ADHD or sensory issues, it should get that kind of assessment, because again, we said the percentage is so high, and a lot of our kids cannot explain their symptoms, either be it because they're very young, or they're nonverbal, or they don't obviously know the connection. So it's our role as a pediatrician to refer to a functional medicine practitioner who can dig deeper into the underlying issues, including the gut-brain issues.
I have a question that I would like to ask you that has circled with us in my research organization for quite a long time. Since we all know that there's not really a successful treatment that comes from the pharmaceutical industry for autism, and really the only treatment that's utilized worldwide, which is ABA therapy, which is a behavioral therapy. It's very expensive, very time-consuming, and you see results in some kids, no results in other kids. And the ones you do see results, it takes a long time. What do you say to that? Okay.
So our role is to guide the parents on basically all the treatment that's available out there, and not to focus on one side versus the other. So we have a basically group of patients who only will do behavior therapy, only will do ABA, and not basically investigate why the child regressed to begin with, or why does he have delay, why is he sleep disturbed, etc. And we have the other group of patients who might just go all into like medical or functional testing, but also do not basically invest in the early intervention. So I always guide my patient to try to do hand in hand both, because if you just do ABA and the child is suffering medically, they're not gonna benefit to begin with. It's just gonna be basically a waste of time and money. And vice versa, if we just do the medical, but the child has some significant delay and he needs to catch up and he needs the support behaviorally, speech, OT, also that needs to be done. So in the best scenario, and especially when finances permit, because both areas of intervention are expensive, we try to do both hand in hand.
Okay, thank you. I have another question that I would like to ask. There are a lot of charlatans out there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there are, and all parents need to be careful of that. Mm-hmm. But there are things that work. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I want to address one of them, which came out of the United States, mm-hmm. and it's this issue with leucovorin. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is just one element of my question. Now, look, anybody that's been in the research part or treatment part of autism knows that leucovorin will work on those who are deficient in folate.
True.
Okay, but it's not really going to do much for all the rest of them.
Absolutely.
So the beneficial aspect of that is very narrow in scope. Since parents don't really have a good, effective option that's known, mm-hmm. okay, as a parent, my mentality is that basically I take the approach that if I'm trying to accomplish something that's not been accomplished before, I need to try something that's not been done before.
Absolutely. I mean, they want to try whatever is available out there, but it's our role as healthcare providers and pediatricians to guide them that, listen, your child might be a candidate or leucovorin based on basically ABC, testing or history of regression or etc. Or no, let's not go there because probably the child is not a candidate. Let's focus on, let's say, gut or mitochondria or. But actually, this kind of FDA approval for leucovorin gives me hope that probably in the next, few years that we're going to get approval for other treatment or medication or supplement that we've been using off-label, and we've been talking about how effective is it, and but we don't have basically large studies to prove it, and it was more case-based or like small group research. So now I hope that this will basically just will open the door for more and more research and look really seriously about use of functional medicine for neurodivergent kids.
Well, as I said, as a parent, but as a researcher for the last 50 years, the things that I try to look at, and I'm asking your opinion of this, so if I'm wrong, tell me, okay?
Sure.
Is that the things I try to avoid, because you have to try new things that don't necessarily have a lot of science behind them yet, okay? If it's just based on solely small animal studies, I don't take it very seriously. And as a researcher also.
Agreed.
If the claims are over the top, such as it's going to cure or the results are going to be instantaneous,
Unrealistic.
then I'm very, very careful of that.
Sure.
And what I look for is credible people who have good things to say about it. They've had good results. They've seen good results, including families. Although, again, as a researcher, with many patients in the autism world, the first thing a parent asks is, can I see video testimonials or live testimonials of parents who've had their child treated with success? And so you're scrambling to come up with all that. And then when you go to them and ask them, well, can you, and they have great success, then you ask them, well, can you do a video testimony for us so you can help other families? Oh, no, I don't want my face or my child's face out there. How do we address that effectively?
Well, I mean, I think as you said, we have to basically always review the research and the case report out there and be basically the guide for the parents to guide them. Okay, this research is very preliminary. It's animal, studies. This has been replicated, even if it's like large case studies. So and it's safe. So let's try it. Has been not tried, or it might have side effects. So I think it's our role to guide the parents. Although they are getting their information from out there, but not all the information is vetted. So it's our role to help them navigate through, all these available treatments.
One other thing that I always tried to look at was if the results are noticeable or identifiable in a relatively short period of time. Now, that I mean less than 3 months. I was always willing, when it came to my own children, as well as our research patients, if one thing existed, I was more willing to try things, and that was if the contraindications were insignificant.
Sure.
Okay.
We have to always, keep safety of our patient in mind, absolutely. And one thing also I advise parents is to keep basically a diary and then use objective questionnaire that we share with the parents, but also with the whole team, like the teacher, the therapist, just to get an objective feedback about how did this treatment affect the child, behavior, development, just to look at it objectively from all sides, all the team members that take care of the child.
Agreed fully, because what I found out is even the parents who live with the child every day, the child would improve, but they would forget where the child actually started from, if they didn't do a weekly measurement from baseline. So I agree with that entirely.
So if you can share with us more about, your research and also how we can guide parents and patients about certain diets. So basically, they hear about the benefit of camel milk because of how nutrient dense it is and the antioxidant effect, but then basically how to guide them to realize that not every basically nutrient out there could work, and there has to be in a certain combination.
Dr. Barea, that is a very good way to state that. What I want to point out is in our research and our test studies, which were 3,107 people, all autistic, varying in age from 3 to 47, what we found was no one nutrient did much. That it takes a combination of certain nutrients together to have success, all right? And we've run into this issue, as you mentioned, about camel milk before. I want to be really clear with the audience that camel milk by itself will do very little. Okay, I mean, there's a small percentage, 1 or 2%, that'll see, some benefits, but it by itself doesn't. There is a particular type of camel that the colostrum in their milk, that there is an extract that can be taken out of that colostrum because it's virtually bioidentical to a new mother's nursing milk. So the child, all children genetically respond to it, okay? But if you take that and you match it up with other ingredients, and actually we did testing with 24 to 42 different ingredients, and we found that the one or two or three or four of them by themselves didn't do much. And we also found that the parents tend to overdo each individual ingredient, give them too much, and then they get a toxicity response. But if you combine those together with this particular extract, which obviously isn't commercially available, but if you combine it with that, then you got a great response in a relatively short period of time, meaning 3 months or less, okay? And the combination of the total is greater than the individual sums.
Well, it's great that we just discussed before the podcast that you're going to run similar research here in the area, because again, the genetic background of the patient in this geographic area might be different. So it would be great to see also, our cohort of patient and our epigenetic makeup basically, and to get more insight about the interaction between nutrient, diet, genes, and epigenetics.
It's really good that you brought up the factor with genes, because we now know that both the mother and the father carry genes that can express into autism in the child when it's triggered by some other, outside factors. But what we found is that if you address at a very early stage, the earlier the better for long-term results. But if you address the deficiencies, the nutrient deficiencies, then it appears that you can, in many cases, stop the genes from expressing into the autism spectrum symptoms. So it's very important that you have the right mix at as early a stage as possible for the best long-term resuls.
As early as pregnancy, right?
As early as before pregnancy.
Before pregnancy.
You are correct. And there's a couple of things that we know about autism that that our listeners should pay attention to or think about. One is we all know that if the mother is deficient in zinc when she's pregnant, that there's a higher prevalence of autism. But now it's coming out that air pollution,
absolutely,
okay, is contributing to autism, and the mother's nutritional support during pregnancy is very important. But the immune system, okay, that emanates from the gut is very critical to the neurological health of the child after birth. And what we're finding is so many mothers are now having, instead of a natural childbirth, okay, they're electing to have C-section. Okay, what they have to realize is the child gets 60% of their immune system, the good bacteria, during the vaginal birth. Additionally, many mothers are now electing not to nurse their child, and especially for the proper length of time. Where does the child get the rest of its immune properties from, except for from the mother's nursing milk? So all those factors are now playing into an exponential growth of neurological disorders, such as, or metabolic disorders, such as autism.
So always remembering the magic and importance of breastfeeding. Absolutely.
Correct. I did, as part of our research, I did 2 years worth in Africa, because what we were looking for is what would be genetically compatible to all ethnic groupings on Earth. And, science has taught us all along that originally they were teaching us that we all emanated originally from South Africa. Now they're saying the Sudan, okay? But at the time we started our research, it was South Africa. So I spent 2 years researching what food groups were the food resources available to our ancient ancestors. And then I spent a year on in a community in Australia, in an Aboriginal community, because that's the oldest continent. It used to be, connected to Africa. And I wanted to know what food sources that they ate, which I found out contributed mainly fibers because of the root content that they had. But what would be genetically compatible to everybody? And so, because we're mixed, we can say we came from the Middle East, we came from the United States, we came from Europe or whatever, but essentially we're one people, okay? And we have there are differences, but there's common ancestors in our gut, okay? And if we address,
See it.
pardon me,
That's a good way to put it.
okay, and if we address, okay, what's fundamentally sound. I'll give you an example. There's a little more than 400,000 plant species on Earth. We originated with a plant-based diet, okay, as human beings. And there's a little over 400,000 plant species in the world. Of those, about 50,000 have medicinal properties. Some of them beneficial and some of them harmful. But of those 50,000, only about 2,500 of them, give or take a few, are more than 1 million years old. So we do all of our research only on those 2,500 plants because we know they be genetically compatible and beneficial to all of God's people.
And not genetically modified, right?
And not genetically
Let me
modified.
guess, the wheat was not part of our ancestral diet.
No, it was not. It's amazing you say that. What we found was that many of the ancient food sources aren't commercially available anymore. We literally had to rent farms in Africa, South Africa, and in Australia, and have them plant and grow certain plants that we wanted to try to utilize as a beneficial treatment because you can't buy it anymore. It's not commercially available. And there's a plant I'll just mention just briefly that's really nutrient dense and does wonderful things because you brought up wheat, and that's amaranth. Amaranth's disappeared from our diets, yet it's one of the most beneficial plants known to man.
True.
But having said, I want people to go out and just buy amaranth because by itself, it's beneficial by itself. It won't address your autism issues. You have to have a combination of several. But it's interesting that you brought up wheat because we've definitely found that.
I think diet is fascinating and it's a big piece of the puzzle when we talk about gut health and not just like basically commercially available supplements that will do the trick.
There are definitely beneficial things out there that will provide significant benefits to somebody on the autism spectrum. You just have to find them. It is available, you just have to find it. What essential testing do you think should be done on somebody on the autism spectrum?
So again, not every child needs exactly the same battery of tests like the next child. So it all depends on the history, but we try to test for the basically basic nutrients such as zinc, vitamin D, iron, again, because most of our kids are deficient with these nutrients. We'd like to do at least 1 or 2 tests to look into the gut health. And that could be a combination of a stool test, basically like a GI mapping or genetic DNA testing or urine test. We also would like to look at the metabolic side, and that could be done through urine tests to look at the mitochondrial dysfunction. It would give us also idea about the neurotransmitter imbalance and so forth. And if we have to, we might go through more advanced testing to look at autoantibodies and genetic testing and heavy metals, depends on the history of exposure. So there are a lot of tests out there. It's very important for the parents to be guided by physicians so they don't end up spending unnecessary, expenses on unnecessary labs.